Okay, on September 15th, 1963, at the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama, on September 15th, 1963, at the 16th Street Church, Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama, 4 young girls that were attending Sunday school were killed when a bomb exploded. At the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama, on September 15th, 1963, 4 young girls who were attending Sunday school, if you can believe that, were killed when a bomb exploded. All 4 girls were under the age of 14. Under the age of 14. And those 4 young girls that lost their life in that incredibly brutal crime were Denise McNair, Cynthia Wesley, Carol Robertson, and Addie Mae Collins. So on September 15th, 1963, one of the worst crimes of the Civil Rights era occurred at the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama, when 4 young girls that were attending Sunday school were killed when a bomb exploded in the church. All 4 girls were under the age of 14. Denise McNair, Cynthia Wesley, Carol Robertson, and Addie Mae Collins. 20 other people were injured. 20 other people were injured, including 12-year-old Sarah Jean Collins, who was blinded in one eye for life. 20 others were injured, including 12-year-old Sarah Jean Collins, who was blinded in one eye for life. Any significance of that name? Her sister Addie Mae was killed. Well, this happened less than a month after Dr. King delivered his inspirational I Have a Dream speech, and this event showed clearly how far we were really away from the dream that he had established there. We were still a long ways away. Well, within days of the bombing, 4 white supremacists were under investigation. Within days of the bombing, 4 white supremacists were under investigation. Within days of the bombing, 4 white supremacists were under investigation. That investigation went on for 2 years without conviction. And finally, FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover just decided to discontinue the case. So within 4 days, they had some evidence that linked 4 white supremacists to this bombing. But after 2 years of investigating without any conviction, FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover decided to discontinue the case. Well, new evidence came out. People would not quit on this. In the mid-1970s, prosecutors reopened the case. So new evidence came out, and in the mid-1970s, prosecutors reopened the case. Finally, in 1977, nearly 14 years after the crime, finally in 1977, nearly 14 years after the crime, prosecutors did convict 1 man for the bombing of the church in Birmingham. So finally in 1977, nearly 14 years after the crime, prosecutors did finally convict 1 man for the bombing. His name was Robert Chambliss. Robert Chambliss. Robert Chambliss. Now, he was actually the ringleader of the whole thing. And he was convicted just on 1 count of murder in the death of Denise McNair. That's what they convicted him on. So Robert Chambliss, who was the ringleader of the bombing back at the Birmingham church, was convicted on one count of murder in the death of Denise McNair. Chambliss was sentenced to prison. He died there in 1985. He was sentenced to prison, and he died there in 1985. People still wouldn't quit on this. And 2 of the 3 remaining suspects were convicted in 2000, believe it or not, in the year 2000. So they kept on this thing, and they convicted 2 of the remaining 3 in the year 2000. They were both given life sentences in prison for that bombing of that church in Birmingham. So people were relentless on this. 2 of the 3 remaining suspects in the case were convicted in the year 2000. They were both given life sentences. Well, the only reason the 4th man avoided prosecution is because he died in 1994. So he died before they could get solid evidence, but they were on their way. So the 4th man avoided prosecution because of his own death in 1994. So really what we had here, kiddos, was justice, right? Took a long time to get it, but we finally got justice. Okay? Those are the 7 events. So we'll do a little review now for you. Tomorrow we're going to have a matching test. It'll be pretty simple. It'll be 20 names. And it'll be worth 80 points. So we'll see if you know who you are here. Okay? So I'll let you kind of get your notes out, ready to go, and we'll give it to you here. Before I forget though, remember our raffle tickets are due pretty quick. February 20th. So you guys got to make sure you get those sold. If you don't sell them, you lose money, and this thing goes to heck in a handbasket. So you got 13 days to get those sold. Okay, Soraya, my dear, tell me who the Deputy Attorney General that was sent to Tuscaloosa, Alabama by President Kennedy to oversee events at the University of Alabama. Who did Kennedy send? It was the Deputy Attorney General. And he sent him to the University of Alabama to oversee events there. He eventually ordered Governor Wallace to allow Jimmy Hood and Vivian Malone to go to classes. But who was that Deputy Attorney General who Kennedy sent to Tuscaloosa, Alabama?
Nicholas Katzenbach.
That's exactly right. Nicholas Katzenbach. Yep. So you need to know who he is. So I don't know if you want to just mark him on your ID sheet or whatever you want to do here. Okay, Will. You should be able to get this. Who is the man convicted of 1 count of murder in the death of Denise McNair at the Birmingham church bombing? The man convicted of 1 count of murder in the death of Denise McNair. Robert Chambliss. Very good. Nyabeth, my dear, who was the Mississippi governor who personally prevented a Negro student from enrolling at the University of Mississippi?
James Meredith.
What's that?
James Meredith.
No, he was the guy that couldn't enroll. Who personally prevented him from enrolling? Meredith was the student. Who was the Mississippi governor who personally prevented James Meredith from enrolling at the University of Mississippi? Who was the governor?
Ross Barnett.
Did you find him?
Yeah, I did.
Who is it?
Ross Barnett.
Ross Barnett. Okay. Brooke, my dear, who was the man that was ultimately responsible for the organization of the March on Washington? The one man that was responsible. A lot of people took part, but who was given the job of organizing? I wrote his name on the board because we had talked about him earlier. I know you're a little rusty on your...
Yeah, it's Bayard Rustin.
Oh, Bayard Rustin. Okay. Bayard Rustin. Very good. Chantel, what's the name of the man who actually owns the famous I Have a Dream speech that was delivered by Martin Luther King Jr.? Who's that lucky son of a gun that gave up $3.5 million?
George Raveling.
George Raveling. Very good. George Raveling. Buck? Who was the African American that was named Associate Press Secretary by President Kennedy to kind of help with the civil rights situation? Who was named Associate Press Secretary by President Kennedy? Andrew Hacker, very good. Keller? Who did Kennedy appoint as a judge to the United States Court of Appeals that eased the civil rights issue? Now, he became the first African American Supreme Court justice after that. So who was the man that Kennedy appointed as judge to the United States Court of Appeals? Thurgood Marshall. Thurgood Marshall.
What?
Kyle, give me one of the two Negro students that were initially prevented from enrollment in the summer classes at the University of Alabama. There were two of them. Give me one. Two students that were denied admission to summer classes.
Jimmy Hood.
Hey, Jimmy Hood was one. Talon, who was the other one? Vivian Malone. Very good. Hannah, who was the man that wrote a civil rights protest song that was entitled Only a Pawn in Their Game? Bob Dylan. Very good. Yes, Bob Dylan. There's Bob Dylan right there, if you know who the guy is. Bob Dylan. He's going to write another song called The Hurricane later in history. Meg, who was the man convicted of the murder of Medgar Evers? Who was the man convicted of the murder of Medgar Evers? Lengthy name. Byron de la Beckwith, yep. Shania, my dear, who was the young Negro radical who was planning on a speech during the March on Washington that was not favorable to President Kennedy's Civil Rights Bill? John Lewis, very good, John Lewis. Sierra, who is the man that President Kennedy appointed U.S. Ambassador to Finland? Kind of ease the civil rights thing. Carl T. Rowan, very good. Carl T. Rowan. Tracy Macy, who is the member of Robert Kennedy's Justice Department that was beaten along with other civil rights volunteers in Montgomery, Alabama by a mob? John Siegenthaler. Yep, John Siegenthaler. Mason, who was the Air Force military veteran that was initially denied enrollment at the University of Mississippi? James Meredith, very good. Courtney, give me one, other than Martin Luther King Jr., give me one of the original members of the SCLC that we talked about. Nope, very early in your notes.
Ralph Abernathy.
Ralph Abernathy was one. How about another one, Nick? Fred Shutterworth. Any others? Bayard Rustin. Okay, very good. Cody, who is the Birmingham police chief who led a force of police officers against the SCLC in Birmingham, Alabama? Bull Connor. Yep, Bull Connor.
You just want Bull Connor.
It's matching, so. Yeah. Eugene Bull Connor, if you want to get fancy. Kylie, my dear, who was that governor of Alabama who promised segregation in the state of Alabama today, tomorrow, and forever? George Wallace, very good. Courtney, who was the elderly civil rights leader who had organized an earlier march on Washington in 1941, but it never materialized? A. Philip Randolph. There you go. Blaine, who is the American Labor Union leader who spoke in support of civil rights during the March on Washington? Walter Reuther, very good. And Milo, of the tragedy at the Birmingham church, what was the name of the 12-year-old girl that survived the bombing but was left blind in one eye for life? Sarah Jean Collins. So, you need to know Sarah Jean Collins, Carl Rowan, Andrew Hacker, Thurgood Marshall, John Siegenthaler, Robert Chambliss, James Meredith, Ross Barnett, Ralph Abernathy, Bayard Rustin, Bull Connor, George Wallace, Nicholas Katzenbaugh, Vivian Malone, Byron D. LaBeckwith, Bob Dylan, A. Philip Randolph, John Lewis, Walter Reuther, and George Raveling. 20, 4 points apiece, 80 points tomorrow. Meet in the Commons.